815 career goals, 5 Champions Leagues, 5 Ballon d'Ors, and still no one wants to sign him. That is the situation that Cristiano Ronaldo currently finds himself in. Despite being almost universally regarded as one of the greatest footballers ever to have played the game, and one of the 2 greatest players of his generation, Cristiano Ronaldo finds himself in rather an unusual position this summer. Throughout most of Ronaldo's career, any manager and any team would have fought tooth and nail to sign him for almost any price, and almost all would have built their teams around him. Now Ronaldo is 37 though, and despite being Manchester United's top scorer last season, and making the 30-man 2022 Ballon d'Or shortlist, it was still his lowest goal-scoring season since the 2006-07 campaign, 15 years ago, and there is just a sense, which is largely backed up by the data, that Ronaldo doesn't offer a great deal outside of goals at this stage of his career. Ronaldo's primary reason for wanting to leave Manchester United, ostensibly at least, according to numerous reports, is because he wants to play Champions League football, a competition which he is synonymous with and has had so many unforgettable moments in. Yet the only definitive offer which Ronaldo and his agent George Mendes have actually received has come from a team that not only doesn't compete in the UEFA Champions League, they're not even based in Europe at all. It is a quandary which has resulted in one of the most unusual transfer standoffs and sagas in recent memory at least. Normally, when a footballer tells their club that they want to leave and demand a move elsewhere, it is because they know where elsewhere is, and that club, wherever elsewhere might be, has informed them or their agent that they want to sign them. In Ronaldo's case, he is seemingly demanding a transfer to nowhere, at least until someone comes in for him. In effect, it is a case of, I've no idea where I want to be, I just know that it isn't here. And I suppose, looking at the state Manchester United are in right now, perhaps that isn't quite as unusual as I initially suggested. Anyhow, unusual or otherwise, I think that it is quite interesting. In terms of the dynamics of Ronaldo's demands to leave, Manchester United's ever-changing position on whether or not he is for sale, the lack of interest in him, and what that tells us about the way in which football has changed over the last 10 to 15 years. So, I decided to make a video about it, and that is what this is. I hope you enjoy it. The first 2 considerations that come to mind for any potential suitors when it comes to signing Cristiano Ronaldo, I think at least, are his age and his wage demands. Ronaldo is 37 years old, he will turn 38 midway through this season, and he is reportedly by far the highest paid player in the Premier League, with a weekly wage in excess of £500,000. That is, over $600,000 for the benefit of any American viewers, which makes Ronaldo the 4th highest paid player on the planet, despite being 2 years older than the average professional's retirement age. There is no indication that his salary is top of Ronaldo's list of priorities in terms of his next club, and it is certainly feasible that he would be willing to take a pay cut in order to play in the Champions League and for a team that he deems to be more ambitious than Manchester United. You know, someone like Brighton or Brentford. It seems less likely that he would be willing to take something like a 50% pay cut though, which would still make him one of the 30 highest paid players on the planet, on more money than the likes of Harry Kane, Virgil van Dijk, and Son Heung-min. Ronaldo scored a lot of goals last season, but you would be hard-pressed to find many football fans who would claim that, in the year 2022, he offers more than a 29-year-old Harry Kane, meanwhile Son scored 5 goals more than him last season, and 8 more if you were to exclude penalties. So Ronaldo would be very expensive, even with little to no transfer fee, and whilst plenty of teams may well still feel as though he is worth an absolute fortune, both as a footballer and as a brand, in terms of the added indirect revenue that he might bring to a club, the reality is that there are very few clubs with that sort of cash. Gone are the days of Real Betis or Lazio setting world record transfer fees. Whilst the European Super League may not yet formally exist, there is, in effect, an elite of 12 clubs who are capable of spending money that the rest of European football simply cannot. And those 12 clubs are Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, PSG, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, and the Big Six in the Premier League. In Italy, both AC Milan and Inter Milan, the last two Scudetto winners, are looking to trim their wage bill rather than massively increase it. In Spain, the Big Three, and particularly the Big Two, are in a world of their own. The most expensive signing made by a La Liga team outside of those three this summer is the €15.8 million, or roughly £13 million, that Real Sociedad paid Celta Vigo to acquire the services of Brais Mendes, and the total net spend of the 18 La Liga teams this summer, excluding Real Madrid and Barcelona, is less than €5 million. I suspect that I don't need to pull up any stats in evidence of the fact that no Bundesliga or Ligue 1 teams can compete financially with Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain. The Premier League is the sole exception to this rule, where we have seen massive investment once again this summer from the so-called lesser clubs, with newly promoted Nottingham Forest having spent over £100 million and counting during the current transfer window. Meanwhile, a club like Aston Villa, who finished 14th last season, are able to sign someone like Felipe Coutinho on £125,000 a week. Nonetheless, whilst they have much deeper pockets than their European counterparts, and many are owned by multi-billionaires, the rest of the Premier League still cannot compete with the top six for signings, since their revenue, and therefore their allowed expenditure, is dwarfed by the big boys, along with the fact that rarely are they able to offer players European football, and even less often are they able to offer them Champions League football. All of that means that for players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and Kylian Mbappe, when they do make transfers, there are an incredibly small number of clubs who are actually capable of signing them. In terms of his age, Ronaldo obviously keeps himself in phenomenal shape, and he is probably the fittest 37-year-old footballer of all time. Even the strictest diet and the most regimented training regime cannot entirely eliminate the consequences of the passage of time, though, and no right-minded person would suggest that Ronaldo is the same animal now as he was 5 or 6 years ago. Throughout his 30s, Ronaldo moved into more and more of a central position, focusing all of his attention on his movement, heading ability, and accuracy when striking a ball on goal, and becoming very much a box player, as used to be a more commonly used term. Ronaldo has never been a workhorse off the ball. At Manchester United, Wayne Rooney, who was just that, sacrificed a number of goals and did a lot of donkey work for Ronaldo, along with Carlos Tevez, and then you had further industry with the likes of Park and Fletcher in midfield. Similarly, at Real Madrid, Karim Benzema and a sensational midfield three masked any deficiencies in Ronaldo's game. None of this is news. Wayne Rooney scored 18 and 20 goals in Ronaldo's last 2 seasons at Old Trafford, followed by 34 goals in fewer games the season after he departed. Karim Benzema scored just 12 goals in Ronaldo's last season at Real Madrid, and 19 the season before that, yet he struck 30 times in Madrid's first post-Cristiano campaign, and he just scored a career-best 44 goals in 46 games at the grand old age of 34. This, by no means, is a critique of Ronaldo, it is actually a recognition of his unique talents. If he hadn't been a generational talent and one of the greatest goal scorers to have ever lived, who time after time produced when it mattered most, then managers as decorated as Carlo Ancelotti, Jose Mourinho, and Alex Ferguson wouldn't have been willing to make the necessary sacrifices willing to accommodate him. But even though Ronaldo offered little in terms of pressing or just about any defensive capabilities, he was absolutely lightning quick, he could jump like no one else in football, and he was always on the move when his team was in possession. He is still a tremendous athlete now, but he isn't as quick as he once was, he isn't quite as aerially dominant, and he doesn't make as many runs in behind. He is still physically and technically good enough to play for any team on the planet, but they would have to play to his strengths. Most likely, sacrifice the talents of other players to accommodate him, and potentially build a team around him. Given that we are talking, again, solely about 12 football clubs, and actually 11 since Ronaldo is already at one of them, almost all have managers and sporting directors with very clear ideas of how they want to play, well-defined systems and formations that they adopt, and most of those systems rely on incredibly intense pressing with no passengers. Except, ironically I suppose, for the club that Ronaldo is currently at. It is for that reason that the suggestion that Manchester City wanted to sign Ronaldo last summer always seems somewhat suspect, as it is difficult to see Pep Guardiola, who is among the most disciplined managers in all of world football when it comes to shape, responsibilities, and patterns of play, would have accommodated an aging Ronaldo. The argument previously would have been that Ronaldo is simply so good that you throw all of those doubts and adjustments out of the window because he will get you 50 goals a season. What has happened, however, over the past few years is that tactically the game has changed with far more reliance on systems, shapes, and cohesion, and far less reliance on individuals. Meanwhile, Ronaldo, with age, has just become slightly less effective. If you asked Mikel Arteta, for example, who he would rather have leading his line, Cristiano Ronaldo or Gabriel Jesus, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that he would pick Jesus, and I think that he would be right to make that judgment. When you think of Harry Kane's performance at the Etihad last season, when he ran Manchester City ragged, dropping deep into the midfield, playing a series of absolutely incredible through balls, and scoring 2 goals, Ronaldo cannot do that. There is still an awful lot that he can do, but he can't do that. So the question becomes, how many of the 11 teams actually capable of signing Cristiano Ronaldo are willing to pay the best part of £500,000 a week for a 37-year-old poacher who will most likely demand, not necessarily literally demand, but just by his very nature, that they radically change the way in which they play the game? The answer, it would seem, and somewhat unsurprisingly when you frame it like that, is none. These clubs also have good reason to believe that Ronaldo won't actually improve their teams based upon what has happened at his last 2 clubs. Juventus signed Ronaldo, primarily, in an attempt to win the Champions League, having reached 2 finals in the 4 seasons prior to his arrival, and having lost them both. In Ronaldo's 3 seasons in Turin, despite enjoying some memorable individual moments in the competition, Juventus failed to get beyond the quarter-finals. And in Serie A, following 9 straight Scudettos, Juve slipped to a 4th place finish in Ronaldo's last season at the Allianz Stadium. Following his departure, Giorgio Chiellini said that Ronaldo needs, quote, a team to play for him. Meanwhile, Leonardo Bonucci went even further than that, stating that last year the team played for him, now the group must rediscover that Juve spirit that was there before his arrival. End quote. Manchester United, meanwhile, though a lot of people have either forgotten or prefer to pretend that it wasn't the case now, signed Ronaldo, along with Jadon Sancho and Rafael Varane last summer, as they went in pursuit of winning the biggest trophies, having been runners-up in the Premier League and in the Europa League the previous season. What actually happened is that the Red Devils went from finishing 2nd to 6th in the Premier League. They got knocked out early of both domestic cup competitions. They were beaten by Atletico Madrid in the quarter-finals of the Champions League, and now they are in a relegation scrap. Alright, I reckon they'll comfortably avoid the drop, but you get the general idea. It hasn't gone very well. And although people will point to the fact that Ronaldo was Manchester United's top scorer last season, which is true, it is also true that the team's overall goal tally fell from 73 in the Premier League this season before he arrived to just 57 last season, despite all of his goals, and the drop-off was even bigger in all competitions. To be clear, I am not saying that Ronaldo is solely to blame or has even been at fault for Juventus and Manchester United's recent declines. But he has certainly proven that he alone can no longer turn a team's fortunes around, and that it is possible that even with Ronaldo, and even if he scores lots of goals, you can still become considerably worse as a team. There is also the fact that Ronaldo is starting to develop something of a reputation for being disruptive. It would be fair to say that not everyone has been particularly impressed with his attitude at Old Trafford, particularly in recent weeks, even his staunchest supporters within the media, and it comes just 12 months since he angered Juventus by forcing through a transfer right at the end of the window. leaving the Italian giants with very little time to find a replacement. I don't think that this is the biggest factor that is stopping anyone from signing Ronaldo, but you can start to see how the list of reasons against doing so just gradually start to build up. In terms of the teams Ronaldo has actually been linked with this summer, Atletico always seemed unlikely, for commercial reasons if nothing else, given the reputational damage that it would do to Ronaldo's brand among Real Madrid fans, of which there are rather a lot. Bayern Munich, even following Robert Lewandowski's departure, always seemed extremely improbable to me given the way in which that club is run, and Napoli, you would have thought, would struggle to stump up the cash. Of all those linked, Chelsea are the only ones that ever seem plausible, and it was heavily reported that Todd Bowley met with George Mendes at some stage to discuss Ronaldo's situation. Now Chelsea have definitively said that they have no interest in Ronaldo, according to The Athletic, with Thomas Tuchel maintaining that signing a centre-forward is not a priority for the Blues. The only firm offer that has apparently been tabled to Ronaldo and his agent is from an unnamed club in Saudi Arabia, who have supposedly offered Ronaldo a contract worth £233 million over the course of 2 seasons. That would make Ronaldo by far the highest paid player in world football once again, overtaking Kylian Mbappe, but it doesn't seem as though securing the fattest paycheck possible alone is his primary concern. Ronaldo obviously feels, justifiably, that he still has something to offer at the very highest level, particularly in the Champions League, and that he will still be fit enough and capable of earning stupid money in some dictatorship in the Middle East into his 40s should he wish to go down that route at a later date. If Ronaldo really only cares about Champions League football and is willing to take a massive pay cut, the most interesting option, I think, which is one that I haven't really seen mentioned, would be for him to sign for someone like Marseille, a huge club with Champions League football, where he could reignite his rivalry with Lionel Messi at PSG. It would be amazing for all of those reasons, for both Cristiano Ronaldo, Marseille, and Ligue 1's respective brands, but it is hard to see it happening. Not only because I don't think Marseille could offer terms that Ronaldo would deem acceptable, but also because they've already signed 3 forwards this summer, including Arkadiusz Milik, who was on loan there last season, and Alexis Sanchez. The reality is, as hard as this is to internalise since it requires conceding that we are all getting older, Ronaldo simply isn't good enough anymore for top teams, almost all of whom are now massively system-based, to make the wholesale concessions required to accommodate him. Quite simply, the pros are outweighed by the cons. He is absolutely good enough to be a squad player for any team in world football, and he would probably be the most incredible super sub of all time, capable of being introduced to go out and win any game when his team needs a goal. But is he willing to be that? It seems unlikely, to me at least. In fact, my suspicion is that Ronaldo was told by Erik ten Hag that he would be rotated rather than starting every game this season, and that, as much as a lack of Champions League football, is what has made him push so hard to leave the club. I don't know that for a fact, or even have any evidence whatsoever to back it up. It is just my suspicion. Anyway, that is it for today's video. I found it interesting, hopefully you did too. Hit the like button if that was the case, or just if you are feeling especially kind. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC7s. You can also find me on Twitter or on Instagram via the username at HITC7s on both, should you wish to do so. Have a tremendous day, and look after yourselves.